Welcome to 15G, derivatives of trig functions. There are two main derivative functions to memorize. If f of x equals the sine of x, then the derivative is the cosine of x. If f of x equals the cosine of x, the derivative equals negative the sine of x. Okay, here's a little animation of the derivative of a sine function. And we will look at, in particular, so there's the sine function. It's just a normal sine function. It goes through the origin at 0, 0, right here. Okay, and it starts with an upward trend. And remember, a sine function with no transformations has a period of 2 pi. Okay, so erase what I just drew there. We're going to pay particular attention to this green tangent to the curve line. Okay, it's telling us what it is here, but here it is right here at the moment, at the beginning of the animation. Okay, so I'm going to click on the animation. Watch that green line. Now, as the green line is following along on the sine curve, the slope of the tangent at each of those points is being depicted with a blue curve down below. Okay, so remembering what the derivative is, let's continue on. Okay, and you can see here that this blue curve is actually the cosine. Okay, so the derivative of sine function is the cosine function. Okay, let's back up here and see it again. So let's stop at some critical points here. We're right at the top. Okay, and notice at the top, if this was completely horizontal, if I was able to stop it right at its maximum, that tangent line would be horizontal, which means that it's a slope of 0, which means that the derivative function should be going through the x-axis because y is 0 at that point. Okay, so just a little animation to show us why the derivative of sine is cosine. Similarly, you could look at something that would show you that the derivative of cosine, this here function, as we followed the tangent line along, would end up being negative sine. So it would come here. So if we looked at, if this was our original function now, and this is y equals cosine of x, and we looked at its derivative function would be negative sine. So its derivative function would be this. All right, back over here. Then if we think about tan, if we have f of x equals tan of x. Okay, well, we already know that tan of x is the sine of x divided by the cosine of x. Okay, so here we could use the quotient rule to determine this derivative. So u would be sine x, which means u dash would be cosine x. v would be cosine x, which means that v dash would be negative sine x. Okay, so this would tell us then that the derivative would be u dash v subtract uv dash over v squared. U dash, we said, is cos x. V is cos x. Subtract u, which is sine x. V dash, which is negative sine x. All over v squared. V is cos x, and we are squaring that. So cos x times cos x is cos x squared. We write that as cos squared x, remember? Okay, negative sine x times negative sine x is positive sine x, which is squared. We write it as sine squared x. All over, this is cos x squared. That's the same as cos squared x. That's the better way of writing it. Now, our most basic identity that we know is cos squared x plus sine squared x equals 1. Therefore, this equals 1 over cos squared x. So this is a basic rule. Again, if you want, you can memorize this. If f of x equals tan x, then the derivative is 1 over cos squared x. But just remember, as for many other rules, if you can't remember what that derivative is, you can use these two rules here to sort it out. All right, if we have something a little more complicated, if we have y equals the sine of some function, not just an x, but some other function in there, or y equals cos and a function, or y equals tan and then a function. Okay, you may have guessed already what we are going to be doing. We will just take the derivative of that entire function and then multiply it by the derivative of the small function inside. So we would just take the derivative. The derivative of sine is cos, so the derivative of this guy multiplied by the derivative of the f of x. And in this case, the derivative of cos is negative sine, so negative sine f of x multiplied by the derivative of f of x. So the same rule applies here. We will have, derivative equals 1 over the cos squared of f of x multiplied by the derivative of f of x. And that's better written this way.